let's go to Atlantis.
Yeah.
Season 6, the Back to Pegasus
Mhm.
arc that you guys did. What were you wanting to do with that? What did you achieve? What did you not get a chance to do?
The
Jeff, if you could start us off.
Yeah, sure. I'll start with that in backwards order. The stuff we didn't get to do was more issues than we did. The approval process was really slow. Um, some of the artists before Gordon Purcell were they were put through a lot of changes,
Mm-hmm.
and some of them understandably, some of them not. And that really slowed down the process. Gordon is a super professional guy used to working with licensed titles, of course, a vast experience with Star Trek. And he really delivered not only what we put on the paper, but on a timely basis. So the ability to do more, and I also, quite frankly, the turnaround time on the approvals was abysmal. Um, that said, what we got to do, first thing, there's Atlantis being on Earth is just like, well, it's just a dumb thing if you're going to leave it there. In terms of like, then it's just SG1.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're just leaving from Earth and going and doing things, and you've got this secret floating thing that you don't want people to discover, that's your novelty. The adventures out there in Pegasus. There's too much in Atlantis that's wonderful and needed to be redone. So we got that pretty quickly. And Mark had come up with a year, I don't know, Mark, years before we ever did the comic, come up with a concept that we were able to drop into this
Which
gate hub.
Oh, yeah, we had, I'll just say when Jeff was referring to approvals, primarily it was MGM studio approval, consumer licensing approvals, which were just, it was very hard to predict. And to just clarify a little bit for the artists that we had early on in the run of the book, the constantly going back to an artist with those types of changes, even when they're drawing for an approved script, without stepping out of the licensed comic thing for a while, because nobody's making an incredible amount of money, you got to get the fulfillment of a project comes from seeing a creative vision come to life. And so when we're writing, we write specifically in certain instances to make sure it gets approved. But the artist is generally free to bring whatever they want angles. They're kind of the director of photography. If we're the writers, producers, and that type of
Correct.
thing.
They light and
yeah,
do a whole
exactly.
scene. Yeah.
And so when they get a lot of, no, this has to be this way, this has to be this way, and they're going back and doing a lot of changes, the meter's running for the publisher who's already on a thin margin. So it was hard to keep an artist for the run of the book, which is always important when you go to collect it, you're flipping through it. And when the art style changes as drastically as it did through the course of the book, it can be disconcerting, to a reader as well as ourselves. And in some cases, what we were dealing with early on in the book was artists who would not draw things that, granted they have the freedom to do what they want in a lot of cases, but in some cases where we specify something, it's a plot point that didn't get drawn. It's sometimes there's spots where it's not going to make sense. So that was a little bit of the frustration early on in terms of saying something that we got to do that we didn't want to do. It's just flip your question a little bit. But one of the things that we did get to do was this idea of multiple gate systems, between, and it's kind of like a version of the intergalactic gate bridge. And what we did was think that at some point, the ancients that developed the Stargate would have had an easier way to get from system to system, go from one gate system to the other. So we kind of came up with this idea that somewhere lurking out in our Milky Way galaxy, or even at some point between galaxies, there is a version of the intergalactic gate bridge that Rodney and Carter developed, but connects, instead of just 2 gate systems, up to 6 gate systems.
Wow.
So the idea was that basically what we were trying to do is find ways to open up the story a little bit.
Other galaxies.
Yeah, exactly. Other galaxies, and also like a parallel system within our galaxy that may go to different planets than the main system does.
Basically, a local system.
Yeah,
Like
and
as
the
if
idea.
if your regular Stargate is the Express, here's one that goes from this station to another gate that's near Earth that we didn't know about before.
The idea was that the gate system, because they always use the analogy of telephones, telephones analogy, that this would be like an extension in an office phone system. So it's like, I want to go from this planet in the same star system to another moon or another planet in the same system. And I don't have a ship. Ships are expensive to run, whether the ancients developed them or not. There's still a cost to it, and
Yeah,
there's still a
resources.
time factor. Yeah, so why wouldn't you develop a short-range Stargate that would let you get to the moon and back instantly? And so we just were trying to play with different takes on the technology and see what we could come up with. And again, all for the purpose of going beyond these stories that each kind of had a specific purpose, which primarily for the first one was to get Pegasus off Earth and back to, or get Atlantis off Earth and back to the Pegasus galaxy.
Okay, and this wasn't fully. So did you hint at this in the comics that are out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it didn't. Basically, the way we had visualized it in the script was, if you think of an airport terminal with gates going down both sides, your doors to the planes, this would have been Stargates going down both sides, and it was drawn quite a bit differently than we had anticipated.
Oh, I understand.
So the full effect is not there.
That's the thing. When I have never been an enormous comics connoisseur. But it's one of the things that I imagine that everyone looks at from page to page to page when you're consuming this medium, especially when you're following characters from actors that every time you turn the page, you're going to go, ooh, that's a really good rendering of that person. That brings me more into this universe. And then you turn the page, ooh, that doesn't really look like them so much. This brings me out.
Yes.
Yes. Is that normal?
It's the constant. Oh, sorry, Jeff.
I was just going to say, for me, and I'm a lifelong comics guy.
Yeah.
What I can tell you is that for me, and I view this as my personal and my professional opinion too. Consistency matters more than degree of likeness.
That's a fair point.
If you come in to page 1 and you're Princess Leia on page 1, page 3, page 7, page 9, all look like the same character, you stand a lot better chance of not jacking with your fan and bursting them out of the moment than you do if you have this one, like you just described, spot on likeness on page 1. And then page 3, you're like, is that the same character?
Yeah, you're literally pausing to make that determination.
Yeah. And it's a credit to the artist, as we mentioned, like Gordon Purcell, who was just innately able to do that, where the page layouts will be done in such a way that you have, kind of these key visuals spaced evenly, and so that because it's going to be hard pressed to do an accurate rendering when in some cases the person's head on the page might be an inch tall versus an eighth of an inch, depending. Yeah. And, one of the things that ties into, in addition to likenesses, as were specifically related to the Stargate franchise, was the concepts of canon and accuracy for uniforms and the technology and things. Because one of the things that we had looked at since the show was originally on, that how come there isn't more Stargate stuff, and one of the things that happened, and I think one of the reasons that the fan base, aside from the story of the characters, is why fans are so faithful to the show and so kind of turn a critical eye towards licensed products, especially ones that are visual in nature, is that the universe that the creators of that show built, from the art department through the producers, was so consistent, and it built a world that you like to be in and you want to be in. And when you saw something that was a mistake or wasn't quite right, it can bounce you out of what you're supposed to be paying attention to. And so there was a large portion of the time where we were kind of sending corrections to uniforms and various other things back to our artists and saying, look, we're not doing this to create a problem for you or to be difficult in any way, but we want to make sure the book has a shot and people have a chance to get into the story and reacquaint themselves with the characters and feel like they're watching an episode again. And this type of thing, like, missing patches on the sleeves, or the wrong patch on a sleeve.
It's pretty unacceptable.
To this Stargate fan base, it is. And being fans, we kind of felt like we were going to our publisher and our artists and saying, this is a potential problem. We should fix this, because we don't need to, the term in football, I think, or sports, is an unforced error. It's like if we can see this mistake, we should correct it.
One of the things.
So that's why Jeff called me the canon guru, and I was like, I'm sure that the people that I was calling and emailing had other names for me.
but the basic thing is that Mark and I have both been fans in this same role. We've both been fans and had the bad experience of you spend money on something and unfortunately get bounced out really quickly. Mm-hmm. And not only do you not continue with that series, it stands the possibility of tainting your fandom of the thing that inspired it. If they're gonna allow stuff like that. Mark came across one very early on in a novel.
Well, it was, and you, David, you might know about this. It's one of the early, before Fandemonium, who has the novel license.
There was the SG-1 novels? Yeah. There were like 2 or 3. I've heard of them, but I've not read them.
Oh, I didn't read much of one because they identified Carter as Amanda Carter.
Oh, God.
Samantha Carter. And it's like that made it through the writer, the editor, MGM, and was published and distributed that way. And you're kind of like, you just like want to throw it away.
Yeah, like, what is this? It's not taking itself seriously. Why should I?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the level of fans that we are, which, we knew what fans would want.
Hey everyone, it's David. Hope you're enjoying the clips during the break. We will be returning in the spring. In the meantime, are you good with English? Are you one of those people who take pride in your grasp of it? Well, we have a great team over here transcribing the backed catalog of Stargate interviews and have dozens more to go. If you're interested in joining me and a small Stargate diehard community looking to preserve the stories brought to Dial the Gate into text form, then please email me at dialthegateshow@gmail.com. There's a little something in it for you, and you'll be helping to pass along the stories to future generations of fans who have yet to discover the show. Thanks so much for watching Dial the Gate.